I think I really figured out something unique with this film in its sort of style, the way it explores big themes through this scientific, trippy lens. And there are certainly some, not just ideas, but how would you describe it? Some areas, some themes, and different branches of the universe to explore.
Wow.
So, yeah, just in development on the moment on a few different ideas.
Good morning, Josef Gatti of the amazing film Phenomena. Joe, how are you today?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
I am so happy you're here. The film is stupendous. Did you read the Variety review of it? I don't think I've seen adjectives more like complimentary from a Variety review. Let me read you a few of these quotes.
These
An iridescent ode to ordinary wonders, the Australian takes a seductive, hypersensory approach to fundamental facts of the universe. Like, what was going on in your mind when you read that review for the film?
Yeah, look, it was all happening at once. It feels amazing, right? It's always a little nervous, yeah, getting a link and reading it for the first time, but overwhelming, it feels great. And to have anyone really or an audience understand what the point of the film is and to get
Right.
exactly what I was hoping for is just wonderful.
It's truly an amazing thing that you put on film. So
Thank you.
take us from the start. Like, you can look on your website, you're involved in like exhibitions, like you're a wide variety of different art forms, but how did you get started in specifically in filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, filmmaking in general as like
Yeah,
first
just like
time. Yeah.
yeah, like how did you decide what I want to make this debut feature? Like, how did you decide to distill all the different forms of art that you were doing into film?
That's a good question. I've always loved film. Like, classic story, I was making home videos on family holidays with the camcorder that goes way back to then. I think I've always loved film growing up, and that was what I studied at university here in Oz. And I'd always wanted to make a feature. It was just something that was it's my favorite format for film, television, media. And I'd been dabbling in shorts and chipping away at
Okay.
things over the years. And it wasn't until I was like mid-20s, I think, where really I'd hit pause on everything for a little bit, and I was just I found myself just looking for answers really. I was at that critical
Mhm.
stage where I was asking some of the bigger questions, and I was trying everything on, and I was trying on different ideas, sort of philosophies. I was looking to different cultures and religions for just the most interesting ideas that existed in the world. And it was those two things coming together where
Okay.
I was going on this deep dive into science and I found such incredible, beautiful ideas. And dad being a physics teacher, he was the one that was able to show me that, yeah, we could film them and record them. And it started really with a short film looking at sound waves from the film
Ooh.
that just like it is in the film there, that sort of introductory chapter where
Okay.
I pointed the camera at the sound waves and recorded it for the first time. And that really was like the seed for the feature film was that moment right there.
And you've done, like, art in music and art and, like I said, exhibitions. How do you feel like that skill set translated? Like, when you were directing this, did you feel like you had that experience already, or was it just, "This is a new experience that I'm doing making the film?"
Yeah, I think maybe it was funny because it started with a short film, and so I'd never tackled anything long form at that point in time.
Right.
And in a way, I'm a huge fan of filmmakers who or stories where it's got a humble beginning and it's this real progression or this long building thing. And it was the case for me. And I think like the series and the exhibition, the immersive spaces, they were all ways for me to just keep building this project into something bigger. They were all a sort of a a means to keep building this project brick by brick in order to arrive at the feature. Ever since that first short film, it was always the target I had in mind was this feature, and everything else was really just a stepping stone to continue building on it and getting it to this point. And I think nothing really can prepare you for a feature other than just doing it. Like, everyone says it's a mountain to climb, and I'd worked on features before in different capacities, whether it was like camera assisting or camera operating in various capacities. So I understood how much work was involved, but to come with a blank page and to finish that final export is it's a whole different thing.
That had to be wild. Do you feel, and this is a film, I think more than almost any other film I've ever seen that needs to be seen in a theater, and that's the challenge of documentary, we'll get to that. I wanna ask you about
Yeah.
immersive filmmaking. Do you see immersive your some of your work with, immersive exhibitions, do you see that eventually translating to a theater? Like, this film would be perfect to be seen in a theater. Unfortunately, that's a challenge. Do you think our future is, like, VR goggles? Like, how do you feel like the future of filmmaking is gonna go in terms of it so we can see a film like Phenomena in something on a medium something other than, like, our laptop or a computer?
Yeah, I think I it's an interesting question. I imagine once the tech gets better on VR
Yeah.
headsets that it will get to a level of film, but personally, I'm one for the quality, like image quality for me is everything. And when I put those goggles on, I'm never blown away. For me,
Right.
slight sidebar, but for me, the most compelling use of VR is when it's interactive and you can
Exactly.
interact with the world. That actually pulls me into that world, and I don't actually care as much about what I'm looking at. It's more about how it feels to be in another space, and I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of potential there. This sort of cross between maybe gaming and storytelling, I think could be a really interesting use of that application. But until it's visually as epic as what you might get from a 4K laser projector, I'm not sure that it's fully gonna take off if it's purely
Yeah.
just a passive experience. In terms of like how this could I also have a background in live events and music. That's part
Okay.
of what I do here in Australia. So I'm at
Perfect.
shows and gigs like almost every weekend here in Australia. And I see an enormous appetite for people wanting to experience things with other people. I know cinema hasn't quite cracked that, but I see people out all the time watching things, listening to things, and socializing around entertainment. And I think perhaps this film could take something from that. So to me, I think if this is going to have a chance, or just documentaries in general, I think having them, it's the eventized approach, I think to me is probably going to be a key. And offering something a little more than just a theater to, to create an experience that's a little more social or, yeah, just a little more there with the people, hanging
Yeah.
out, experiencing it together. That's slightly elevated from a traditional cinema experience for docs specifically.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I feel like Phenomena is doing that for documentaries. You hardly ever talk about the footage on documentaries, but in this film, you talk about the footage, what you filmed. You also talk about the story. You're the narrator for it. You go into why this is personally important to you, and then what's a gut punch at the end of just holy shit. Just like you wrap it all together. Just so brilliant. When somebody sits down and watches it, what do you want them to feel like when they leave the theater? And was it when it premiered at CPH Docs, did people have that feeling, do you think, when they left the theater watching the film?
I think so. Yeah, CPH was incredible. True False as well. I was overwhelmed, I think, by the response, actually. I've never had people come up to me at breakfast before or yelling my names in the street and giving me high fives and just telling me that how moved they were by it. That was really beautiful. I think part of what's really interesting to me about this film is that, and because I've had so much experience in various forms of this, whether it's the shorts or the immersive versions, I'm always fascinated by what people see in the visuals and what they take from them. And in this film,
Right.
we're careful, I hope, to give you just enough information to allow you to really understand what you're seeing and that it's all real and it's all based on the fundamental elements and forces of the universe. But I've hope I was careful enough to allow room for the audience to find their own meaning and to have their own experience. And that's to not
Mm.
put too much of what I feel from these works onto the audience and to allow room for exploration in the experience. That's really That was really important to me to offer these beautiful ideas as almost like a sample plate or something, if that's a
Ooh,
way to describe it. So as to not
oh,
have a super defined, clear message of the film, but room to play and room to be curious and room to explore. Yeah. Does that make sense?
that's it does, I and that's how I felt after watching it, which is I took so much personally from it, from somebody who's been out in nature and just be able to think about light and think about just sound and gravity and just everything, all the elements that you brought together in the film. I was thinking about both how it was portrayed, but also my interpersonal interaction with those, and so that really hits. So you
Yeah,
worked
cool.
with Sandbox Films. Why was
Yeah.
that important for you to do? And then logistically, as a filmmaker, what were some of the challenges of this film?
Yeah. Sandbox Films, they came in to after we finished the series for our public broadcaster here in Australia, we took the film on the road and sorry, the series and began pitching it as a feature. And yeah, so we had a great 30, 40 minutes of work to pick the best bits from and to begin pitching it. And honestly, I don't know if we would have got this up without Sandbox. They happen to be just the perfect, I think, partners for this. They're extremely science, of course, is part of their mission, asking questions and curiosity, but also having a really strong artistic sensibility in the science space. I don't know if there's anyone else quite like them, really. It felt like when we met them, it felt like such a like it was meant to be or something. It was yeah, it was amazing. So they were pivotal in turning this from a short series into a feature film. So I don't think we could have done it without them. And yeah, sorry, the next bit was just the challenges in making this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How did you logistically make this work? And then as a filmmaker, looking back on it, what did you take from it and say, "Wow, I'm so glad I was able to learn this as part of making this film"?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's so many. So I guess I don't think I've said this yet out loud with you, but it's been about 10 years since that first short film. So that was in
That's crazy.
2016. Yeah, it was
That's
I did other things in between, obviously. I've got a life to live and bills to pay, and this art and science is it's a tricky one. I learned I'm I filmmaking is, I would say, one of my passions. Like, I love it. It's so much fun. I think it's the coolest art form. So, I learned so much about filmmaking, cinematography. It was like I just yeah, I would say that's where I guess I learned the most, and over the course of 10 years, I learned a lot about myself and what I'm drawn to and
mm,
what excites me about the medium and how I wanna push it forward. I think the process itself is very tactile and hands-on, and I think outside of the challenges of just what each of these experiment involves, which is just each one is its own little mountain to climb, like weeks of work just to just to get it going. So that's okay, it's working now, but then the process of recording begins, and then there's a whole another layer of exploration of trying to make it do something more or finding an arc within the experiment uh, once you've got it working on camera. That was early days, that was the biggest challenge, was actually just making it all work and finding a sequence of experiments that actually meant something to the bigger picture story that we're trying to tell. But after a few years, I think I got the hang of that, and now the idea of trying to put one of these incredible audiovisual sequences together is second nature. I know what I'm doing now in that regard. That's not nearly as scary as with the feature film was this was my first time narrating anything. I know you mentioned that. So I'd never really considered that. I'm not one for the camera, so to speak. I don't never put myself in things. I'm not particularly excited by putting a lens in my face. That's not
right.
where I feel naturally comfortable, except just quick sidebar, I did work as a
Yeah.
production assistant on a kids show when I was, like, in my early 20s, and I was, because I was, like, production assistant runner. I was of the age of the hosts, I would find myself on, like, kids' television every Saturday morning in Australia, just doing something silly with a host. It was honestly one of the
That's awesome.
one of the most yeah, it was so fun. I really look back on that fondly. That was such a good time, but I was awful. I was terrible in it. Like, I was never good. It was
I don't think the
enough
kids notice that.
exactly. It was fine for kids' TV. It was fine for kids' TV. But yeah, having to I think that was the biggest challenge for the feature film for sure, was, like, not just figuring out how to put together a feature for the first time, but to
Yeah.
also find my voice as an artist and learning how to write for myself and actually getting it out in a way that made me feel good about what I was saying. That was for sure for the feature, that was the hardest part, I think, for me.
But it works, like, you nailed it, and I feel some documentaries you watch, you could tell the person wants to make it about them a little bit, and that's fine, maybe it works in the documentaries, and this is about you, like, it you shares like, you talked about your dad, but it's not like you make it in a way that it overshadows the film, and I imagine that was what you were going for.
Yeah, yeah, it was really important to me to say just enough to give you, the audience, an idea of where I'm coming from so that there's some framing around the film, but yeah, you're right. After about the first 10, 15 minutes, this sort of personal angle begins to take the back seat, and it
Yeah.
allows for the science and the visuals and the wonder of it all to really take over until as the story progresses, the not to give too many spoilers away, but there's like this existential feeling that begins to creep in, which I think is something you can't ignore. I think it's universal, and yeah, that was we gave ourselves permission to come back to that at the end of the film to just summarize and wrap up the film in a way that we can all feel.
It's incredible. So, a soapbox here to talk about your last few weeks. So, Australian filmmaker, that means that no matter what, you're probably unless you're no matter if it's a festival outside of Australia, you're traveling. True false, CPH docs means long travel. What how should we think about Australian filmmakers in the wider film market? Should we think those poor guys, gals, they're gonna have to hop on a plane and travel 14 hours no matter what? Should we allow more virtual options? Like, how do you feel like we should accommodate the voice of Australia when participation means giving up days, weeks of your sleep, of your time? Or is it just like one of those things that you have to be there, suck it up? It's just part of life of being an Australian filmmaker.
Yeah, I think it's part of life as just being an Australian in general. If
Yeah.
we want to go anywhere in the world, really, it's a real mission. Asia being the slight
But it's still
asterisk.
8 hours or
Exactly. No, it's just part of the deal. I think I don't want to speak on behalf of all of Australian filmmakers, but for myself, the way I feel
Yeah,
about it is I know this is a thought that's echoed by people that I know in my network. But I think we I personally feel like sometimes we're slightly isolated and alone down here. You got Europe and the States. eh, You guys are up there doing your thing. Everything's
right.
clicking together and films all being shot out of London and North America. And we're just every now and then a production will come down and there's a little bit we get to put our hand up from time to time. But for the most part, I personally feel like we're quite isolated from the broader market, which is a little difficult and challenging
Yeah.
for us to grow and to compete at that level. No, I think it's super exciting to be asked overseas to go and take part in the broader community and to share the film with a larger audiences and take things international. And I thankfully, yeah, just shout out to Screen Australia, our funding body here in Australia. They supported us to go to CPH, so there are
That's
ways
awesome.
for us to connect with the broader community. And no, and to festivals as well. True False as well. They were great. They supported me to go to that festival, and any travel support to get out there is really important for us because it's not just far away. It's expensive as well for
Oh
us.
my
So
gosh.
every bit really counts. But no, I think it's I've never felt the way I felt when being in that room with the audience and to feel that with the crowd and having people shout my name, it was such a moving experience, and I certainly wouldn't wanna do that from yeah,
From your computer
from home,
screen.
yeah. Yeah.
That's phenomenal, Joe. So When can people listening to this see Phenomena? If are there other festivals planned? Do you have a sort of a theatrical run planned? And then as part of that, what's next for you? Do you have another project in mind of what you're working on?
Yeah, so we've got a few festivals in the pipeline, so I'm sure we'll be
Okay,
on the
awesome.
road with it probably for the rest of the year. They haven't Most of them haven't been announced yet, the ones that we've
Okay,
been recently accepted into, so stay tuned, but we'll be back in Europe soon. There'll be a chance to watch it in Australia soon, so that's really exciting. I've had so many people looking forward to the Australian premiere, and that's on the horizon,
absolutely.
we'll say.
Okay,
Um, yeah, that's the plan, and right now it's all about finding distribution and looking for a sale, so that's gonna be the task for us
okay,
for the rest of this year through the festival circuit. And yeah, for me, I think I am so ready to move on to a new film. It's been like I said,
great.
it's been a while on this one, and I've had a absolute avalanche of, like, ideas bottled up while I've just been trying to get to the end of this one, and it's all coming out now. But yeah, I think I really figured out something unique with this film in its sort of style, the way it explores big themes through this scientific, trippy lens. And there are certainly some, not just ideas, but how would you describe it? Some areas, some themes, and different branches of the universe to explore
What?
in this style. So yeah, just in development on the moment on a few different ideas.
And do you see yourself staying documentary? Is there like a narrative rom-com in your future, Joe?
Not quite rom-com, but yeah, I love narrative filmmaking
Yeah,
too. It's something I've thought about, and that was as a young filmmaker, that was always the dream. And, but I also I love the intersection of narrative films that
yeah.
feel somewhat documentary in their nature. Shout out to Richard Linklater with Slacker was a huge film for me growing up, how, like, real that film feels. If I was ever to venture into the narrative and the drama world, I'm sure it would be somewhere in that world for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that answer. So, Indie Film Podcast, Joe, love supporting other people's projects. I'm sure you got this film made because you were collaborative with so many different people, and they're like, "Yeah, Joe should make this film after a decade." Is there a film or is there a film or filmmaker through your travels that you wish more people knew about? Can be we could use Slackers, that's going back there with Richard Linklater,
Yeah.
that's a fantastic film. But
I
anything
think
that you've seen or somebody that you've a friend and been like, "Man, I wish people more people knew about this person."
yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, yeah, Richard Linklater, people know about him. It's safe to say. Maybe
But
Slacker, not
still,
so much.
yeah,
Slacker was such an interesting, amazing, cool film. I know it wasn't his first film exactly, but his first sort of film that was released way. Check it out.
yeah,
That film is amazing. No, honestly, I would say I'm much more of a hands-on filmmaker. The process of filmmaking is something I'm much more, I think, into than I would say my film knowledge is not eh, I spend more time making films than watching films, put it that way.
interesting.
So, I don't know if I could offer anyone that
Mm.
your listeners probably wouldn't have heard of before or seen their films of.
That's really it's so fascinating to me, Joe, because my first guest this season, Robert Kalani, he keeps a spreadsheet of all films that he watched per year. And like
Yeah.
last year, he had was on like we talked in like December. He was like on film number 340. I'm like, what,
Wow.
dude? And it's
Wow.
like he keeps a spreadsheet of the films that he watches. And then you have just like the full spectrum. And I feel like there's two ways to think about it, right? There's one way, like you watch everything and you just have like this idea of the craft. And then there's another approach where like you create original art based from something where you haven't watched every single film and it comes out with something maybe original in a way that if you had seen 300 films in the last year might not have existed. So we want both. Like you want to have both
Yeah.
ways of doing things.
I think that's exactly right. I think you hit the nail on the head there. If I'm lucky, I might watch a film a week, at least in
Yeah.
the last few years. I've just been so all in on it. And I think you're right. I think part of that speaks to perhaps why this film is so unique in its structure and its approach to filmmaking. I think part of that, yeah, does come from the fact that it's been stewing in here on its own for such a long time.
So, Joe, what's the best way for people to keep track of when the film will be out, what festivals will be going to? You have a
Yeah.
website, I think, and then Instagram?
Yeah. Yeah, so the website for the film is pretty simple, phenomena.film, and yeah, just check me out on Instagram, Josef Gatti, and I've got everything there that's linked to the film Instagram and webpage and everything else, so yeah, give us a follow and yeah, I'll be updating as soon as there's more to say.
Perfect, Joe. The film should be seen in a theater. I have never read a Variety review that was as complimentary as this Variety review was for your film. Well earned. It's just fantastic viewing, and I'm cheering for your continued success. And thank you so much for joining me today for the podcast.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and yeah, thanks for the kind words. It means a lot to me. Thank you.